Hello everybody, my name is Luigi Pingaro. I'm a photographer and sometimes I like to talk about video games. I don't talk about them, I really don't play them anymore. So I want to talk about MMOs, and this video started a long time ago, the genesis of this video. I wanted to do a short little piece on the MMO called WildStar and have my thoughts about that, but I thought I might talk a little bit more about MMOs. So, what is an MMO? MMO stands for Massive Multiplayer Online RPG. And basically, the concept is that you would log into a service on the computer, and nowadays on the console, video gaming, on the television, and you would join with other players, sometimes around the world, sometimes around your area, and you would go on dungeons, defeating enemies, defeating bosses, and basically functions as an RPG would. You collect gear, you rise in level, you collect objects, you get to form guilds and groups, and it's a very intriguing concept. Now, the caveats to MMOs is that if there's an MMO that's not as popular as the others, there's not many people online, and you cannot start a multiplayer dungeon or match, and sometimes games railroad you into having many different players, as a way as, you know, encouraging you to play with other players. But if there's not many people, then you can't do the quests. The other difference is that there is a lot of cooldown meters, and people more familiar with games like Skyrim or The Witcher 3, when you attack opponent using a magic or sword and stuff, sometimes in MMOs there's a cooldown meter. It's just 1 or 2 seconds until you can attack again. This might be disconcerting to newer players to MMOs. Also, MMOs, graphics wise, the textures and the models are of lower quality, and they have to, because MMOs have a vast gigabyte. The size limit is vast. You've got to download a lot of things. So when you install the game in an MMO, let's say Warcraft, because that is the granddaddy of all MMOs, you install Warcraft, you still got to install all these models and meshes and all these game files into your computer. And every time you log in, the game will check that there's models are there and textures are there, so you can load it into for your experience in an instance, what's called an instance, where just an area in the physical map in your region where players can load. Each of them will load their own area, physical game world, and it will share it with others who are also popular. Well, it's difficult to understand, but the thing that makes MMOs different is that some of them add what's called doodads, or clutter, as I like to call. You ever play Deus Ex Mankind Divided, and you go to someone's apartment in the game and you find magazines all over the floor? Those are doodads. They're not made by the modelers or the textures. It's an independent artist who puts that in there just to give it some more clutter, just to make it seem more lived in. And usually the best MMO, I've only played a few MMOs, and I'll give you a quick rundown on my opinion on it. Anyway, this is my opinion, so if you've got something else, please tell me. World of Warcraft is probably the most enjoyable of them all. It's got the most rich lore, it's got a fun style, the gameplay is fun. It's just really frustrating, and it's a very gigabyte heavy game. It costs a lot of resources on your computer. WildStar was interesting, and it's got lots of lore, but it just didn't have that extra spark, you know, that made it rise above the rest. STO is another one I played. The first MMO I played on a console, and I enjoyed, and it's really, the ground combat is not that good, but the space ship battles are really, really good, and the story is really, really good. That reminds me of a different topic I must talk about. And SEO plays a lot of it has a lot of detail. It's got all sorts of references to original series of Star Trek, Voyager, Deep Space Nine. Even the movies, it references all good and bad movies, the J.J. Abrams and universe. If you're a Star Trek fan, you enjoy it a lot. The most recent MMO that I've been playing is Neverwinter, which is a fantasy MMO based on the Dungeons and Dragons campaign. As a former Dungeons and Dragons player myself, I enjoyed it very much. They make references to Dungeons and Dragons, and because it's made by STO, the same people who made STO, there's a lot of little details, like Drow and their Underdark, and the Sun Elves and the Dragonborn, not the Skyrim Dragonborn, but the Dragonborn race. All lots of little details based on Dungeons and Dragons. The number one I think that makes MMOs special is the story, and it's played. MMOs nowadays are played like a single player game. If you remove the multiplayer aspect to it, it plays like a single player campaign. There is no real reason to log on to online and play with other people unless you're doing multi-person dungeons to take down on an enemy, or you're helping people. I do not like player versus player. I've never liked deathmatch, not even during my Unreal Tournament days. Not even in Call of Duty, because I was a sitting duck. No. I'm not interested in player versus player, so I did not choose that. So there's really little reason, because the plot, usually you go into a zone, which is a region on the map, you do the quest line, you move on to another zone. It's very linear. The story is very linear, especially in World of Warcraft and Neverwinter. The story is quite linear. There's not many MMOs which allows you to skip back and jump. And of course, I think about this point I should talk about that there is a notion that MMOs are dying. Just because some subscription numbers are going down does not mean that MMOs are dying. Some of them are not as popular as others, and they eventually kill off their servers, so you're unable to play anymore. But I do not think that MMOs itself are dying. I think the internet gaming is changing in ways. Gone are the days of vanilla Warcraft, and you would go online, you would go and meet your friends, your internet friends, your guildmate, and you do a run and you ask people in town, you say, hey, do you want to do this? Let's come with this, man, we'll get this, we'll do this cool raid, we'll get some cool gear, we'll do all sorts of stuff. Gone is, I think, is the communication type app thing to it. The common thing with most MMOs that are played is the chat box. You can talk and chat with people. But I think that those days are going there where you just meet your MMO friends are gone. It's been many years, people get married, people don't want to play video games quite as much anymore, and things have changed. MMOs are not the king of online gaming anymore, just like deathmatch in first-person shooters aren't the king anymore. We want something more. People mostly play Overwatch these days, these cooperative team-based shooters, or MOBAs, the multiplayer battle arena, which I've yet to discover what it actually is. So I think the MMOs days as the premiere of online multiplayer entertainment is certainly over, but I don't think it's dead. And I was just playing it in Neverwinter, and there was this event, because MMOs are a persistent world and it changes. Not only does it have a day and night cycle for some MMOs, but also there are these random events that is kind of like holidays in the real world. And there was this just event where I was just splashing water bombs in what's called in my country, in the game it's called water skins, and splash them with other players, and it was fun. And as I look in the window, I get to see the chat window, people saying, hey, you want to buy some of this cool gear for end game and out of real money for the exchange system. And there's still a lot of life. There were a lot of people in the city of Neverwinter. considering that the game mostly takes place in that city. But also find there is quite a number of people in SEO, and there's still people playing WoW. So I still think that there is some life to MMOs yet. It's still, I do find them fascinating. I do find them a different sort of playstyle compared to an open world such as Skyrim and a story-driven RPG such as The Witcher 3. It's a different sort of breed, but I don't think they're dying. I just think internet trends are changing, and people will go back to it. Those people who used to play WoW and got married and stopped playing will eventually come back to it. Maybe because of expansion, maybe because they want to relive their days. They will come back to it. I think it's unique that it's got this multiplayer aspect to it. Of course, there is the problem of pay to win. I'm not, in regards to microtransactions where you would pay for a cosmetic object, like you would pay for some fancy glowing blue horse, for example, a mount that the player character rides, and there are a few things that would actually pay money for. Mounts is one of them, because flying mounts makes things a lot more easy to travel, so you won't aggro enemies, etc, etc. And there are a few things that I would pay actual money for the MMO, but this I would think is a reward system. If the game has been good to me and is something that I really need from the game, then I am willing to pay money. I've got, there's no qualms against that. However, if an MMO is set up where the only way to beat a dungeon or to beat player versus player death matches is to actually spend money, that you really have to do it, there is no choice, have to do it, then that I do think is wrong, and that's what turns off most people off it. So I'm not a fan of that. If microtransaction isn't forced, if there is no way to complete the quests and get in-game currencies, and you're forced to buy in-game currency with real money, then that is a big no-no. One thing I should mention about MMOs is the cost. Now, some of them are free to play with microtransactions, and some of them are cost by the subscription service. The benefits of that is that this money goes into maintaining the servers, maintaining quality of the game. However, if you're a kid and you're just starting out, it is usually a bad idea to pay for a game with your parents' bank account or credit card or something like that. You're going to get into a lot of trouble. So usually the best ones are the free to play first, and just make sure that you block any PayPal or transactional Visa or anything that which enables microtransactions if you don't want to pay that much. Of course, like I said, microtransactions is a way to reward the developers of the game, to reward the people who maintain the servers of the game that you're playing by spending your hard-earned money for an in-game substance, right? So that is one other aspect, is the notion of between free to play and pay by subscription, which is completely separate from the issue of pay to win. And lastly, I think I shall mention that the people who hate MMOs the most are the people who play MMOs. There is this thing that WoW is dying because its numbers are going down. Yes, it's natural that subscriber numbers are going down. All MMOs do that. But people have been saying that games like WoW have been dying since vanilla, since the beta. That it's always dying, it's always dying. I don't think it is dying. I don't think MMOs are dying. I just think that internet trends are changing. They're changing into different things, and one day even Overwatch will go to the same route as MMOs. It will be relegated to a different form of media that people can still enjoy, provided that there are servers and the games and the communities are still running. So I do not think that MMOs are dead quite yet.